In this video, we're going to show you how to migrate your WordPress website from one web host to another. What I'll be doing is creating a backup of all of the associated files on the server, including themes, plugins, images, WordPress itself, and so on, as well as making a backup of the database, so therefore I can export that and then import it in the new location. And if you've looked into this before, you're probably aware that there's a number of ways that you can actually move your site, and indeed a lot of them are probably easier than what we're going to show you how to do today, but we can't guarantee that all of those other methods will work on all web hosts, whereas this, we're confident that for 99% of people they'll be able to replicate these steps, and even then it's very, very straightforward. It's very simple to do. The only thing is that it can take a little bit of time waiting for name server records to change, which is completely normal anyway and would be the same regardless of what process you take. So in order to do this, you need to have access to both web hosts, the one you're moving from and the one you're moving to, and you also need to have access to be able to change the name server records of your domain name in question. So let's get started. We'll kick off by just having a quick look at the WordPress website that we're going to move. You can see it here on my screen now. It's using the 2014 theme. It's the current version of WordPress, which is 3.9, and I'm just using the 2014 theme. And in terms of content that's on the website, I'm just using the theme unit test content that's available off of the WordPress.org website that theme developers use when testing out their new themes to make sure they work. So there's quite a bit of content there, as you can see. There's images and all sorts. So this is a pretty decent example of the kind of site you would normally be using. In another tab in my browser, I've got name.com open. You can see I'm looking at the domain name, ourmusicblog.com, and at the moment you can see there are two name servers, a small orange being the host that this website's currently with. I've also got my small orange hosting panel open. You can see the link to cPanel is just here. Of course, how you actually get to the cPanel link will vary from host to host, but it should be generally pretty easy to use. And then in the final tab that I've got open, I've got my Sci5 hosting account open. I've already got the domain name set up in this account such that I can go in and make changes very easily to it. But there's actually nothing on there at the moment. It's just a record with the account. So how you set up the domain that you're going to use with your new host will vary slightly, but you should generally just be able to add it on as an extension domain or an add-on domain, depending on the company's terminology, into your existing account. It should be very easy to do. Even if it's a new account, you generally provide that domain name in the sign-up process so it can be associated with your actual account. So the first step we need to take is to go into a small orange or whoever your host currently is, and then open cPanel. What we're going to do is create a backup of all the files first and then download that. I'm going to use the file manager that is actually provided through cPanel. You can use an FTP client if you like. You can SSH to your server and zip it up through shell and then copy it down there if you want. How you actually go about doing that, that's entirely up to you. But this way is something that's available with pretty much every single host. So it's something that is repeatable and people can do. So what we first do is just select all of these files, and then we hit compress up the top. You can choose whatever compression type you want. I'm just going to go with zip. Very, very, very straightforward file type that I'm sure most people have used before. And in terms of the name, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it WP Backup. And then I'm going to hit compress files. Takes about 2 seconds, and then you get the message saying that that's been completed. So I can close that now, and then I just need to find that file. Here it is. It's only about 24 meg, so all I do now is hit download. And so that started downloading. So that's the backup of the files, images, plugins, themes, and everything that we need. So what we now do is jump back into cPanel, still with the current web host at the moment, and then just scroll down until you find everything about databases, which you can see here now. And we need to open up PHP My Admin. Now, just like backing up your files, there's more than one way to actually go and back up your database. But similarly with doing this, we're going to use PHP My Admin because it's an extremely common tool that if you haven't used it yet, that's probably somewhat of a surprise, and I'm sure you'll use it eventually anyway, because it is something that most web hosts use. So once you're in here, It might look slightly different depending on the version they use, but it should be basically the same. So what you need to do is find the database you want to pull down and export. So that's our music, WP82, as you can see. Then up in the top, just slightly over to the right, you can see export. So we need to click on that. Then here you can choose quick, that's absolutely acceptable, and just hit go. And what that'll do is download the SQL file of your database. And for most people, that's really a very fast process. The SQL file is generally not too large. Most of the weight of your website's going to be in the other files unless you have an enormous website with a ton of posts on there. From here, what we need to do is jump over into the tab where I've got my domain registered, so with name.com. As I said before, yours will probably be slightly different depending on who you actually have it registered with. What we need to do is change the name servers. So we're moving them off a small orange and onto Site5. So those are just dns.site5.com and dns2.site5.com. And then we just hit apply changes. And now we have to wait. So what we've done so far is taken a backup of all the files off the server, including htaccess and all themes and plugins and everything. We also taken a backup of the database that we want to import into the new host. We've also changed the name server records. So yes, we do need to wait now because it can take a little bit of time for the name server records to update across the internet. Sometimes it's as fast as 5 or 10 minutes, other times it can take a couple of hours. So it just does depend. We're going to wait for this to change over. However, you don't need to. You can actually go on and move into the next step now anyway if you'd want, which will also mean that your website will have absolutely no downtime if that's something that's really important to you. As you can see on my screen now, I've refreshed the page, ourmusicblog.com, and it's just showing a very blank page at the moment. This means that the name server change has gone through successfully and that the website is trying to load from site5.com, which technically it is, but yeah, it's just that there's nothing there at the moment. So what we need to do now is get the WordPress files back and also the database. So what you need to then do once you've had success with every other step so far is jump into the dashboard of your new web host. As we've discussed, we're using Site5 for this. And what you first want to do is go down to File Manager, and it's slightly different in terms of the layout, in terms of how you get there compared to what we saw with a small orange, but the actual application we use in the browser is exactly the same. And what we need to do here is upload the files, the zip file that we had before. There you go, you can see that's quite empty at the moment. So we'll just hit upload and it'll then ask what file we want to actually upload. Just go choose file and downloads. And there we go, so wp backup.zip is the file we made. So it's starting the upload now. It's 23.6 meg if I recall correctly. So that won't take too long to upload. You can see it's already at about 10% down there in the bottom left. As you can see, the upload is now complete and it says that down there in the bottom right hand corner. So what you're going to do now is click on back to that particular area there. And what we can do now is actually extract this file. So we just select that again, wp backup.zip, and then click on extract. It says where it wants to be extracted to. The directory is public.html, which is definitely where we want it to be. So then we can extract files. And now we wait. It's probably going to throw a couple of errors because there's going to be a couple of duplicates there. So we can just hit close now, and let's just have a quick look over exactly what we have. So all those files are there. There were no errors, so let's go and check the website and see what we get. Error establishing a database connection. This is not something you'd normally want to see, but in our case right now, it's actually not a bad error to have. It means that the WordPress files are all up there correctly, and it's trying to connect to the database, but it can't actually find it, and that's what we're going to fix now. So we will leave this file manager open, but we do want to go back into the web host dashboard. And then from there, we'll go out of this file manager area and back into the main dashboard. And what we then want to do is scroll down and find databases, which we have here. Now, this exact process will vary slightly depending on who you have your hosting with, though what we set out to achieve is exactly the same. So what we want to do is open up MySQL databases, and what it's going to show us is how many databases we have at the moment, how many users we have and so on, and you can see it's all blank. So what we want to do is create a new database. We'll call it ourmusic_wp demo, and we want to click on create database and add a user. So it's asking for these details now. We'll just hit generate password, which I'll copy, and then we hit finish. So here we go, we've created a database and a database user, which means what we can do now is actually upload the exported database that we've got already. So what we need to do is go into phpMyAdmin. You can go back to the databases area we were in before, or as you can see on the left hand side, I've got phpMyAdmin there. So I just click on that and wait for it to load. As you can see, it's loaded now. And then what I do is go to ourmusic_wp demo. You can see there's nothing in there at the moment, so we click on import, and then it asks us what file we want to upload. So what we can do is choose the file we downloaded earlier. You don't really need to make any changes there, and then you just hit go and wait for it to upload. And as you can see, the import has been successful. It's imported all of those tables with all that data into the database now. So we can close phpMyAdmin. We've done everything we need to with the actual database. What we need to do now is go to wp-config and actually make some changes there. So back in this file editor, we find wp-config, and then we just hit edit. It'll open up the file, and it'll ask about the character encoding. For most people, just hitting edit is fine. UTF-8 will be what you've used there, but you can turn it off as well if you're not too sure. Wait for it to load up. Now I've actually already gone and done this, but what you need to do is where it says DB name and DB user is change those details. So in the old WP config, it was WP82 because that's what the settings were from the previous host. So we just changed the database name, the database username, which as per what we created before, they're exactly the same. And then under the DB password area, we've put in the new password that we created when we created the database. So providing you've made those changes as well, you just hit save changes. And then what you can do is just load up your website, and it should actually load perfectly. And there we go. So we can see we've completed this process. The website's loading flawlessly. All the images are there because we've ported everything across. All that you need to do now is just log in and go to your widgets and plugins and make sure that they are all still working exactly the way you want them. You know, these are the checks you should be performing anyway when you do this kind of migration, because usually when you migrate a WordPress website, any widget settings they're the ones that you would probably lose. So you will need to go and set some of them up again, most likely. But let us know how you go. Hopefully this has been super helpful for you. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask in the comments below, and we'll get back to you.